Tycan East. Our guest today is Sam King. She is the CEO of one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the country. And we are going to talk to her about a wonderful concept today she talked about, that she does not think herself as a female CEO, but only as the CEO. A very insightful advice to all the women and even men who wants to be the CEO. Sam, welcome to our
Thank
show.
you for having me.
And your speech was very inspiring.
Thank you.
For women as well as for men too. I got very inspired,
Thank
I
you.
must say.
Thank you.
So I want you to elaborate the same concept that, generally when we think about the business or we meet a female leader, consciously or unconsciously, right away we start thinking in gender, in the terms of gender.
Yeah.
How you have managed to take that out?
Yeah, it is true that I think that we all have conscious or unconscious biases, and those come into the picture when you are engaging with somebody, whether it's a man or it's a woman. And I think when you see women in leadership positions, especially in technology, because there are so few of them,
Sure.
It stands out, right? From the standpoint of actually being in the role and doing the job, me being a woman doesn't necessarily factor into what the right decisions are to make from a strategy perspective, or a financing perspective, or where we want to take the company, et cetera. So if you're staying focused on the objectives and in terms of leading your organization, your gender doesn't really come into that scenario. Now, where gender does come in is that I think we as leaders have responsibility to make sure that there is more diversity and more diverse representation in technology. And I think that that's the path that you should pursue with that gender lens. But in terms of doing the job day to day, my board's expectations don't change on the company or me just because I'm a woman, right? My employees' expectations from what they want to get from their employer don't change because I'm a woman. So I think that's where it's easy to separate your gender from what you need to do, but at the same time, you can still be driving the charge for diversity.
Okay. Now, another thing which really stood out very clearly during your talk was you said that you had 2 kids, were having another kid coming up, or
I only have 2.
2 kids. Okay,
That was
two kids. Okay, so
yes.
that how you are going to and how you dealt that with your work.
Yeah.
If you can just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think it's a struggle that every parent goes through, and I think it maybe is a struggle that women go through a little bit more, just because of historically the traditional roles that men and women have found themselves in. Although that has sort of changed completely, but at the same time, you do feel this intimidation about pursuing a career and at the same time being a good parent, and you just think about, are there even enough hours in the day to do both, right? And what I've found is that it really comes down to creating and trying to have a supportive environment around you. It starts with the support of the people at home, your partner, your family. It starts with the support that your organization can provide to you, right? And so, as I had mentioned, I chose to go part-time for a little while because I felt that that allows me to balance what I needed from a life perspective and a work perspective, and then came back full-time later. And I don't think that it really held me back in any way. So I think that you can balance it. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. It's tough, but it really is about making sure that there's the right support infrastructure around you at home and at work. And that's the responsibility that I think employers have towards people in their organization that are starting families and are facing this dilemma. Hopefully that the support infrastructure at home is something that people can access.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the cybersecurity.
Yes.
Now this is a very important issue today because no matter you are on a phone or computer or wherever, the security has become very important, and especially the cybersecurity.
Yeah.
How challenging this problem is today?
Hugely challenging. I mean, if you read the news reports and you hear stories of breaches after breaches, and it's not that the security industry hasn't been trying to solve this problem for a long time. I think the challenge is that just when you solve one problem, some new problem emerges. And the reason for that is that the technology landscape changes so rapidly. So, we have been focused on securing our enterprises when everything ran inside the enterprise. what happens when everything goes to the cloud? What happens when everything goes through to the mobile devices, right? So the landscape of technology changes so rapidly, and you do security to something, right? You do security to the rest of the technology infrastructure. So as long as that keeps changing, it's always going to be a category that needs to keep pace with the changing technology landscape, and that's what makes it challenging. Because your old problems don't go away,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And you have now new problems.
Sure.
And you're always going to be trying to steer between the old and the new. And that's what makes it a hard problem
And
to
also
solve.
because of the increasing use of technology in virtually every aspect of life.
Absolutely, and the interconnectedness, and where does your data reside? If you're using APIs to go create a service offering of some kind, how do you know what you're talking to on the other side? What data do they have access to? I mean, just the confounding nature of the interconnectedness that exists in technology infrastructures now makes this a pretty big problem.
Excellent. Now, you are not based in Boston, right?
We are actually, we're
Oh, you are headquartered
in Burlington,
in
Massachusetts.
Berlin. Oh, excellent.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So tell us a little bit about how the Boston is turning into a real hub for the cybersecurity companies.
Yeah, so I think it was Boston Business Journal, the journal that said that there are
I used to work at the Boston
Oh, did you work at
Business.
BBJ? Well, then
Yes.
you may know this.
Sure.
There are maybe like over 50 cybersecurity companies, and I
Sure.
think that number underrepresents the number of cybersecurity companies there actually are, because there is a very thriving startup network here of cybersecurity companies. Because over the past few years, we found there to be some pretty sizable cybersecurity companies that have developed in this area. You've got Veracode, you've got Rapid7, you've got Carbon Black, you've got CyberArk. And as so often happens, a lot of these companies have cultivated talent in the cybersecurity space, and some of those folks have gone on to start other companies of their own. And there's obviously a great talent pipeline that exists in the Boston area. So I think that Boston is a great hub for cybersecurity.
Excellent. Sam, thank you very much for your time.